Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Pierini. I'm a Marie Curie Fellow in Anthropology at Sapienza University of Rome. I'm visiting professor at the Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina in Brazil. I'm also co-coordinating with Alberto Groisman the HEAL Network for the Ethnography of Healing. So thank you for joining us today for our workshop, Trance and Healing in Visual Ethnography, Referentiality, Ethical Issues, and Assemblage. We have two fantastic speakers with us today, Roger Canals, who will be discussing his film, A Goddess in Motion, María Líonza in Barcelona, and Ana Stela Cunha, presenting on Caboclos Nkisis, a Territorialidade, Banto no Brasil and Cuba. The workshop is organized by the HEAL Network for the Ethnography of Healing and my Marie Curie Global Fellowship, the Transnational Healing Therapeutic Trajectories in Spiritual Trance, in partnership between Sapienza University of Rome, Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina, and Oxford. The postgraduate program in social anthropology of the Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina is hosting this year's event in Brazil. And I would like to thank the other members of the organizing committee, Roger Canals, Alberto Groisman, Vania Cardoso, Fernando Cielo, and the Instituto Brasil Plural. The event and project are founded by the European Union with the support of Sapienza University of Rome. So this workshop is following an event that we held yesterday on mediumship and health, dialogues and tensions, which included the roundtable discussions between anthropologists, psychologists, and spiritist therapists in Brazil. The aim of the HEAL network is of the ethnography of healing is indeed to promote the encounter and collaboration between scholars and religious leaders and spiritual therapists and health professionals, and the discussion on ethnographic approaches to healing, spiritual trance, mediumship and possession, and religious transnationalism, including a reflection on how the ethnographer experiences their body and their knowledge in the field. But also we have the dissemination of research on the ethnography of healing to a broad public through our events, our website, and our social networks. So with Roger Canals, we're developing the visual ethnography section of the network, which includes an archive of films on our website that we're currently building up, and a section on photography and one on training. So you're welcome to join us should you be interested in adding links to your works on the website, healnetwork.eu. This is the first of a series of visual ethnography workshop, which will be followed by one in Oxford in 2022 and one at Sapienza University of Rome in 2023. As a network, we organized several workshop, conference panels, and publications reflecting upon the researchers' bodily knowledge in the field and how to deal with therapeutic experiences of trance, including a forthcoming book edited by Bergen, published by Bergen, Other Worlds and Other Bodies, Embodied Ethnographies and Epistemologies of Healing. So the idea of this workshop developed from our conversation about filming rituals, in which our interlocutors in the field manifest spirits. So we asked some ethical questions. Who should we ask when this happens during a ritual? The medium, the spirit, both? But when and how? And in this sense, how can our presence alter the development of the ritual? And how are the filmmaker's body and technological devices are involved in the ritual? Can or should cinema intervene in the healing process, especially if it has a transnational dimension? So our speakers will discuss these issues along with some technical ones, commenting upon some selected scenes from their films. And both filmmakers address transnational rituals and reflect upon their own experiences of undergoing cleansing rituals. You may watch the full films following the links on our website. And before moving to the discussion, Alberto Groisman will say a few words, and Alberto is professor of anthropology at the Universidade Federal de Santa Catarina and co-coordinator with me of the HEAL network. Alberto.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm sorry, my rusty English, but I will try to say a few words about the session of today. Yesterday, we touched some issues, a few issues that are let's say, stimulating our dialogue. And one is instability, and another one is a world in trance. It's not just the mediumship trance that is in play nowadays. The world is in trance. So as an anthropologist, I think that anthropology is in trance also. So I think that what I would call the ethno-audiovisuality as a way to communicate research and thinking about things that we are researching on is very synthetical of some of the words we use to entitle these sessions. One is communicability, and the other is tensions. We can see when we watch ethnography visual work, that for to produce this audiovisual works, our filmmakers that are talking today may have had many tensions to resolve, and many situations in which communicability was in play. So I think that I am very excited to listen our the contributions of our invited, and so a good session for us.
Thank you, Alberto. So now I'm happy to introduce to you our first speaker, Roger Canals, who will present on his film A Goddess in Motion, María Líonza in Barcelona. Roger is the advisor for the visual ethnography section of the HEAL network. He is associate professor at the University of Barcelona, specialist in visual anthropology and Afro-American religions. He holds a PhD from the École des Hautes Études in Paris. He is the PI of the ERC Consolidator Grant Visual Trust, Reliability and Accountability and Forgery in Scientific, Religious and Social Images. He has made several ethnographic films, internationally awarded, most of them on religiosity and visual culture. His last film, Chasing Shadows, was made in collaboration with Ramon Serró and María Temudo. And besides the film he will be discussing today, he also published with Bergam a book, A Goddess in Motion, Visual Creativity in the Cult of María Líonza. So, Roger?
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you, Alberto, and hello to everyone, wherever you are, because we are all in different places around the world, which is great. Although I hope I can see you as well face to face at some point. Anyway, I would like to share with you some thoughts about the film A Goddess in Motion, María Líonza in Barcelona. This film forms part of a broader research on the cult of María Líonza that I have been conducting for the last 15 years, Now this research is concluded, at least for a certain time. And this research has given birth to a multiplicity of outcomes that I see as interconnected. Films, articles, an exhibition in Barcelona, a book, as Emily was mentioning. But today I would like to focus on this, one of the main films of this long project, which is A Goddess in Motion. So I would like to share with you my screen, and I hope it will work. Yes. Let me see. Okay. Can you see the website now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So this is a website that I have designed in which I have gathered most of the scientific outcomes of this research. In this website, you will find a link to the book, but also links to the different articles and book chapters that I have written on this topic. You will also be able to watch the films, to have a virtual visit to the exhibition I created in Barcelona, and to have a glimpse on a participatory website that I ran for 4 years on the topic of María Líonza. So I don't know if you are familiar with the cult of María Líonza. The cult of María Líonza is an Afro-Latin American practice from Venezuela, and the origin of this religious practice is, as in many other places, the encounter between the Indian tradition, the African tradition, and the Catholicism. So these three sources encountered in the Venezuelan soil and gave birth to this religious practice, along with spiritism, occultism, and many other influences. And in this religious practice, spirit possession has a key role. Actually, during ceremonies, mediums are often possessed by the spirits of ancestors or by the spirits of the divinities constituting the spiritual pantheon of the cult. María Líonza is the main figure of this religious practice, and it is a very fascinating figure because she's depicted and represented in many different ways. One of the ways in which she's depicted is as an Indian woman raising a tapir and holding a pelvis bone on her hands. But we may also find María Líonza, for example, as a queen with white skin or mixed race skin, sorry. And occasionally we can find representations of this goddess as a Black woman. So the film A Goddess in Motion, María Líonza in Barcelona, was made thanks to a fellowship from the Werner Grant Foundation in New York, and with the production of Jordi Urovich Produccions in Barcelona. So this film is, let's say, the second part of my first film on this topic, which is The Many Faces of a Venezuelan Goddess. The Many Faces of a Venezuelan Goddess explored the practice of the cult of María Líonza in Venezuela, whereas A Goddess in Motion focuses on the practice of this cult in Barcelona. So for me, this second film was very special because it was like turning the camera to myself and trying to find in my home what I had tried to see in Venezuela 10 years before. So it was a very interesting and very challenging possibility for reflecting upon, I mean, the nature of anthropology, the difference between center and periphery, the relation between home and elsewhere, and to use cinema as a way of exploring how healing rituals within this Afro-American cult adapt into a new cultural and social setting. So I conceived this film as an essay. So what does it mean, a filmic essay? A filmic essay is a piece which experiments visually with the form and the narrative of cinema, and which tries to go beyond the usual rules and norms and conventions in ethnographic cinema. So there is a increasing dialogue between, let's say, experimental cinema and ethnographic cinema. If the idea is that we only can say different things if we try to say them differently. So if we experiment with the ways in which we film, but also in the ways we edit, the relationship between image and sound and even colors. So the idea of the filmmaker is to try to use image in an original way to convey new ideas and new experiences in the viewer as well. And I see, and this will be, I mean, one of the main aspects of my short presentation here, a analogy with the healing process, with the act of healing. No? The idea of the say tries to convey a certain experience in the viewer, the person who's watching the film. And I think that this idea of experiment is very close to the healing ritual, in the sense that experiment has to be with experience, that is, with something that is lived in a very corporeal way, but also the idea of experiment has to do with the idea of an attempt or a tentative to transform reality through certain acts and dispositives. And actually the act of healing is also, this is a performative act which tries to alter the current state of things. And this is a very important thing to highlight here. When we film, we have to conceive the film and the filming process beyond the representational paradigm. So when we film a ritual, we are not just depicting, representing what is going on in front of the camera. In a way, the camera and our presence belongs or forms part of the ritual we are filming, and is part of the movement in a kind of filmic choreography in which we are involved. And we have to be very aware of that. And this is not a problem, as the objective paradigm of ethnographic cinema used to say. I mean, this permits us to have a deeper understanding of the healing ritual. And it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, I don't have to register in the most objective way what's going on, but I can use cinema not only to better understand what's going on, but in a relational perspective to create a deeper relationship with those participants in the film. And why not to use cinema for experimenting in methodological terms? For example, a experience that I conducted in different occasions during my research was, for example, to film a ritual in which the spirits descend into the body of the medium, and then to the day after to show these images to the medium and to let him or her comment on the images while he or she was possessed. And it might be a very interesting experience to develop this kind of video elicitation experiments. So what I want to say with all this is that, I mean, the notion of experiment, of experimenting, that is triggering a set of events without knowing exactly what's going, how it is going to end. The idea of experimenting with the bodies and to try to alter things is common to most of the cinematic tradition and ethnographic cinema in particular, but also is part of any ritual of healing. But I would like now to focus on three different aspects of the film A Goddess in Motion in Barcelona film, which is in open access, by the way, so you can watch it and share it with your colleagues or the students if you wish. The first concept I would like to to highlight is the concept, as Emily said, of referentiality, but I can also use the term reflexivity. What is reflexivity in this sense? Reflexivity is the explicitation of the connection between the product, that is the film, the process of production, that is the way in which the film has been made, and the agents involved in the process of production. So for example, the filmmaker, but also the participants appearing on the screen. In most of the ethnographic films, this triple connection between the film, how the film has been made, and which was the agreement between the participants in the film is omitted. It's not made explicit. One of the specificities of the FILMMAKERS is precisely the explicitations of the conditions which have made the film possible. And I think it is an ethical stance. It is a way of saying, okay, that was the agreement that we had to make the film, but it has also an epistemologic interest in the sense that it gives us the context which gives sense to the ritual under study. And this film, it was very, I decided to adopt a very reflexive stance because in some way I was filming in my own city in Barcelona. So I decided, for example, to show the steps that I have to follow in order to get the permission to film a ritual. So it is, again, something that it is not always shown in ethnographic cinema. You see the ritual as something that is going on in front of the camera, as if the camera was not there. I adopted a radical different point of view, and I decided to show the kind of rituals I had to follow myself. And I hate appearing on the screen. I love filming, but I don't like appearing on the screen. But this time I said to myself that I had to be somehow brave and to dare to be on the screen as well. So now you see a full screen. Is it right, Emily? Are you seeing the full screen? Yeah. So here, for example, I will show you some minutes of the film. In this scene, I am purified by a believer on María Líonza. It was a long time ago, almost 10 years ago, not 10 years, 8 years, 7, 8 years. So I am being purified with the smoke, with prayers. And this is something that I had to follow each time I wanted to film a healing ritual. So if you want to film a ritual in which someone has a disease, has a problem, has a bad spirit in his or her body, you have to be cleansed beforehand. You have to, you can't enter into the ritual bringing with you bad energies or any this bad force, as they say. So you have to be cleansed beforehand. So I show you some minutes of this sequence.
Que sale el tabaco, que es un momento de un poco de nervios y de estrés.
Sí, aquí sale, mira. Y está oscuro, no es que tiene brujería ni nada, sino la mala influencia. Cuando las cosas le salen mal a uno, está trancado. Sí. Búsquelo por psicólogo, por donde lo busque, es lo mismo.
Ya. Pero no es que haya una
sí,
no es que haya una brujería o algo.
Ni nada, no. De hecho, en estos días el que hice para pedir el permiso y todo salió bien.
Bueno, el baño de hoy quizá me relaja un poco,
Sí,
¿no?
sí, porque en el subconsciente está, porque claro, todo cuando uno se va a meter a algo desconocido, por más que bueno, te relajes siempre, bueno, sí. Porque es que esto no engaña, ¿me entiendes? No. El subconsciente tuyo, todo esto que me sale aquí es lo que está en tu cabeza. O sea, ¿me entiendes? Y es lo que has pasado esta semana, o sea,
Pero bueno, la cosa irá para mejor. Eso sí se puede pedir también.
Tú pides.
Yo pido.
Pero fíjate, te vas relajando y se va mejorando. Eso va. Palabra cierta.
Sí, no.
Siempre que digas algo, para que veas, plum, afirma, cae siempre una ceniza. No me preguntes por qué, pero bueno. Mira, ¿tú sabes quién está ahí? Esa es la reina María.
Esa es la reina.
Sí.
This is the queen. So this is what we call in visual anthropology a visual regime. In this specific religiosity, the age of the tobacco has a very important role. And here he's seeing María Líonza, so the spirit, the main figure of this ritual, it appears as an image in here. And this is a sign that everything is going to go well, that I have the permission to undertake this research. What I find interesting of this, I hate seeing myself on the screen, but the thing is that the study of this healing ritual involves also some kind of healing experience on myself, on the anthropology of himself, because when I was here, when I was receiving this smoke, and I tried to relax myself, because you are not allowed to get into a ritual in which someone has a disease, being stressed or with bad energies. So it has an effect on yourself as anthropologist, as researcher. And so I wanted to put it into images, to include it as an aspect of the film. In order to be honest, ethically, but also epistemologically speaking, you see. Another important thing, if I am receiving the smoke, and if this person who nowadays, today, has not the same opinion on this cult as the day these images were taken, and I have to say this, but actually, if I am receiving the smoke and this medium is performing the ritual, then there is another person, a friend of mine, who is filming. So there's a third person. And if you pay attention, you'll see how the medium is looking at the camera all the time. Well, this idea of looking at the camera is another important aspect of what I was naming the filmmaker. That is, in the classic objectivist ethnographic films, this was the forbidden shot, to look at the camera. So that was the shot that anthropologists hated, because it made explicit the fact that someone is filming and that someone appears on the film, and that there is an agreement, a relationship, that things are happening because we create a relationship with others that transforms ourselves, that transforms the other ones, and that creates a shared situation. And this shared situation is a relational one in which each person, each participant defines its position vis-a-vis the others. I would say that this is the most anthropological shot, the eye-to-eyes shot. Are you following me? Is it clear what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah, okay. Is everything going well? Great. So reflexivity would be the first concept I would like to discuss in here. The second one is movement. I mean, very simple notion, movement. I mean, cinema is the art of life in motion. Cinema permits to capture life not as abstract ideas, but as a lived process. Cinema is the art of motion. And when we film, I mean, it is not like in photography. In photography, we have a composition of elements, but in cinema, we record time. We record time. The most simple unity in cinema, which is the shot, is a capsule of time. So, and I think that it is interesting because any ritual, especially healing rituals, have to do with the idea of movement and something which is in motion. Not only because people move, not only because I mean, because time goes, time passes, because there is a movement of substances, there is a movement of objects, there is a movement of states, there is a movement of spirits, there is a movement in terms of definition of each person involved in the ritual. So I think that one of the capacities of cinema, one of the potentiality of cinema, which make cinema so appropriated for studying healing rituals, is the fact that it permits to study healing rituals not as abstract ideas, abstract things, not as states, but also, but rather as movements, as kind of choreographies in which the participants are transforming themselves through through a wide range of strategies, including spirit possession, healing techniques, therapeutic images, and so on. I would like to show you in this regard a sequence of this film. At the end of the film is a rather long sequence, but I have just selected some minutes. And this is a healing ritual in Barcelona that I filmed some years ago. And the patient has received a mal de ojo. Mal de ojo is nevil eye. So someone infected by jealousy, looked at him in a very bad way. And since then, this person is affected by nightmares and impossibility to be happy in his life. And a ritual is performed to free this person, to get rid this person from this bad energy.
Comience. Y comenzamos a cortar brujerías, hechicerías y encantamientos. Con el nombre que lo bautizaron, con ese nombre reventamos brujería, hechicería y encantamiento de su cuerpo, porque sale y sale de su mente, de su cerebro, de su corazón, de sus pulmones, de sus riñones, de su estómago, de sus manos, de sus brazos, de sus piernas y de sus pies. Si alguna persona malintencionada usó su nombre para dañárselo, sea mujer o sea hombre, blancos o negros, lejos o cerca, encarnado o desencarnado, altos o bajos, gordos o flacos, desaparece de tus caminos como desaparece de tu cuerpo. Como desaparece de tu cuerpo toda energía negativa, toda brujería y toda hechicería, cortando a raíz en esta santa hora desaparece. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo, 3 veces tembló la tierra, 3 veces tembló el mar, 3000 veces en esta santa y bendita hora. Toda brujería se va a cortar, se corta porque somos hijos de Dios. Llevamos la sangre de Jesús y la leche de María Santísima, llevando la sangre de Jesús y la leche de María Santísima. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. 3 veces tembló la tierra, 3 veces tembló el mar, 3000 veces en esta santa y bendita hora. Libre vas a quedar, porque reventamos piedra que obstaculizan sus caminos, reventamos espinas que le vienen hincando, reventamos cadenas que lo tienen atado. No habrá perro rabioso que le quiera morder, ni gato salvaje que le quiera morder, mucho menos serpientes venenosas que se le quieran acercar. No podrán, porque yo le trabajo con la Santísima Trinidad y el gran poder de Dios, haciéndole el triángulo de protección, cortando de la cabeza a los pies, de los pies a la cabeza, en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. 3 veces tembló la tierra, 3 veces tembló el mar, 3000 veces en esta santa y bendita hora, conjuro y conjuro en esta santa y bendita hora, este santo cuerpo, también lanzando al mar enemigos en esta santa y bendita hora, cortando en el nombre de Dios Todopoderoso, por la izquierda, por la derecha, por delante y por detrás. Libre vas a quedar en el nombre de Dios Todopoderoso, en el nombre del Padre, en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo, criatura de Dios. Yo te ensalmo, yo te bendigo, y nuestro Señor Jesucristo, Redentor del mundo, te da la santa bendición, sacando y sacando en el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Con tus ojos verás claridad, con tu lengua hablarás claridad, con tus oídos escucharás claridad, criatura de Dios, porque eres hijo de Dios, llevas la sangre de Jesús y la leche de María Santísima. En el
I shall stop here because I have only 30 minutes. You can watch the whole film, and I will be very happy to respond to your questions during this seminar or whenever you want. You are free to send me emails. But I would like to highlight here the fact that they are always in movement, as if you see, they are always moving around the patient. And it's like a sort of choreography. I like this term. They are moving all the time. They are moving, they are speaking very rapidly. They are extremely gifted in doing so. And they are using sounds as well, the sound of scissors, for example. So it is something sonic, we have to deal with texture, we have to deal with arms, with body, with movement, and all these aspects of the healing ritual are very different to convey solely through written words. Cinema is very appropriate to capture this sort of cinetic dimension of healing rituals. And the idea here is that there is, I think that if they are always moving, is not only because they are nervous or because they want to seem very dynamic, it is because this kind of ritual has to do with the idea of movement, with altering, with moving everything around, with changing the states, with creating some wine. For example, the idea of wine is very important in all rituals, especially in this one. You have to create wine. It has to move. I mean, it has to be movement in order to make things change. And this is the performative idea of ritual, which has to alter reality by acting on it. And I would say that this is part of the cinema itself. I mean, when we film, we are not just depicting, representing, recording what is going on, but our presence in a way transforms or intervenes. Then we have to discuss in which degree on what is going on. And this is a post-representationalist conception of cinema. So the idea of movement is key. And then the third one, and I will bring this presentation to an end later on, which is the idea of transnationality, which is one of the key aspects you are discussing in this, in the Healing Network and in Emily's project as well. So how can we cinematographically show, convey the transnational dimension of rituals nowadays? And I think that cinema is, again, very well equipped for doing so. Ethnographic cinema, the debates around ethnographic cinema have mainly focused on the shooting process, the fact of being there. And I'm shooting and recording what it's going on, the ethical implications it has, and the methodological problems. The fact, for example, when I film a ritual like this one, I know that I can't be between the patient and the altar. I know that I can't be there, and I can't have a frontal shot of the patient because I can't stop the flow between the altar and the patient. Well, this is something that you have to know when you film in this context. And it's interesting to know why I can't be in this spot. Okay, but the shooting process is just half of the story. The other half of the story is the editing process. And in the editing room, it is there where we build the sense, the meaning of the film by creating associations between different images that have been shot in different moments of time and in different places. So in this filmic essay, I, along with the editor of the film, try to convey this idea of the transnational dimension of the cult of María Líonza by using the strategy, which is not very new, of the split screen. So, for example, minute 12:40 in this here, this person starts playing drums in a very quiet way because he doesn't want to bother the neighbors, of course, because we are in a flat in Barcelona. And then I showed the difference between Barcelona and Venezuela, where they feel much more free. I'll show you another example, and then I will proceed to the conclusion of my presentation. In minute 1 hour, in the same ritual, healing ritual I was showing, this person has to undergo a ritual technique which consists in putting a blanket on his body, and it represents somehow that the ancient person is dying somehow, and that a renewed person is arising. And I had witnessed the same ritual technique in Puerto Rico and Venezuela, and so I tried to again to use the idea of the multiple screen to show continuities and discontinuities, and also I put my own voice. There is a long debate in ethnographic cinema about voiceover. Voiceover has been very criticized, with reason, because sometimes it's very authoritative, but there are different ways of using voiceover. Of course, there is a voiceover that tries to explain what the images show, thus reducing the strength of images. I personally don't like this approach, but you can use voiceover in a much more intimate way, in first person, in order precisely to explicit the conditions under which the ritual was filmed. And it is exactly what I did here.
Los siglos, amén. Levantemos el corazón, lo tenemos levantado. No vaya a abrir los ojos. Vas a pedir con tus ojos cerrados. Vas a abrir tus ojos para ver todo lo que vas a pedir. Con tus ojos cerrados tú pides y luego los abres para ver todo lo que estás pidiendo. Te tapo con el santo manto rojo en esta santa y bendita hora, que es el color de la sangre de Simón Bolívar que derramó por libertarnos. Hoy quedas libre para emprender una nueva vida de amor, de paz y armonía. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Aquí tenéis la luz. ¿Es la luz que iluminará tu entendimiento? Sí, es la luz de la verdad. Aquí tenéis la luz. Es la luz que iluminará tus caminos por donde vas a pasar, para que no vuelvas a tropezar. No volverás a tropezar. No volverás a tropezar.
Aquí del que es tracta és de morir. Morir per tornar a néixer. Per néixer com un altre. Per esdevenir altre. És una tècnica ritual que havia vist moltes vegades a Venezuela i a Puerto Rico i que tornava a veure aquí, a Barcelona. Endinsar-se en la nit per veure després, amb altres ulls, la llum del dia.
De poder en el nombre de nuestro Señor Jesucristo, abra sus ojos para que vea con claridad a partir de hoy todo lo que ha pedido. Siéntese. Te levantas en el nombre de Dios Todopoderoso, dejando el pasado atrás.
You leave the past behind, and this is the idea, and you see what's going on. So there is an analogy of the fact that cinema allows you to see, and that the ritual allows you to see as well something new, something that you didn't know before the ritual. So it is time for me to close my intervention. It's I think I try to convey the idea that cinema is as a technique, as a language, is very powerful for depicting the transnational dimension of healing rituals, the movements, the place that the ethnographer has in these rituals, to convey to the audience a corporal experience as well, not only, let's say, a conceptual one. But I think that we can go even further, and I would like to go back to the idea of performativity that I explained at the beginning of my presentations. So images, in a way, images can heal, and this is an idea that Emily and I have discussed. Images can heal. The images of the ritual are images that helps the medium to heal people. So if we can say images can heal in the sense that they can alter what's going on, they can have a key role in this kind of rituals, and that also the images that we make in these places take part in the ritual, but also these images can heal in the sense that they can have an effect on the viewers as well. They can allow the viewers to think on therapeutic processes in another way. They can broaden our understandings of healing rituals. So in this way, images of healing are images that may intervene into the healing process in a very direct, performative, and strong way, and being of benefit for not only those who appear in the film, but also for those who watch it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roger. This was fascinating, and you raised so many issues that there are already so many questions. At least I have a few, but we can discuss all the questions later on in the debate. And I will move to the next speaker. And our next speaker is Ana Stela Cunha, who will be presenting on Caboclos Nkisis, a Territorialidade Banto no Brasil and Cuba. Ana Stela is an associate researcher at the Centro em Rede de Investigação em Antropologia, CRIA, the Universidade Nova de Lisboa, and adjunct professor at the Federal University of Maranhão. A PhD in African linguistics from the University of São Paulo, and postdoc in social anthropology from CRIA. She worked on notions of healing and spell in the Bakongo Society, Mayombe Forest, Congo, Angola, and in the diaspora in Cuba and Brazil. She lived most of her life between Cuba, Maranhão, and Congo, Angola, and she's been making ethnographic films since 2010. Ana Stela.
Okay, hello, thanks for the invitation. I will try to talk in English. I will try. I will present today, it's as Roger said, my research too is part of a broader research. So I will present here a part of this triangle between, I had divided my life between Cuba, Brazil, and Brazilian, but I lived part of my life in Maranhão, in Amazonia, and Congo, Angola, and in Portugal too. So I will try to do the connections between these spaces as an anthropologist, but as a religious person too, because it's very difficult to search this equilibrium. And I will try to show here how my personal life touched my career, and the opposite too. Maybe sometimes it's more frequently. And Caboclos Nkisis, was a project that I finished in 2015 or 16, I don't know. And we had to book. I can share the book in PDF after this, and a series of encounters between religious person, anthropologists, and new technologies, just to try to do this translation about the many. I will call these languages. How can we anthropologists can translate this knowledge, this new knowledge for us? That is, how can we talk all the time about concepts like agents, and how can we materialize this in the movie, when we will film this? So this project was focused, we focused our attention on religion, identity, movement, cultural heritage in the well-known Atlantic space. Creatively rethinking the theories of diaspora and exploring the concepts that guided our work. And it was a multidisciplinary focus, and we are guided by an empirical ethnography methodology. we are trying to know and explore meaningful stories in their cultural and religious manifestations. I prepared a kind of self-biography here. I would like to share with you, because I'm trying in this moment to prepare a script of my own life, and it's a super short biography and not a non-conventional biography, because I just selected some points and moments of my life that cross these lines of my production, my visual production, and how could it be important for us in these discussions to touch some questions like how my personal life and career are linked. I will read, and it's short, and after this I will show some parts of the film. I was born on a Wednesday, and I learned from Lydia Cabrera's readings, but also from the almost daily visits to religious houses in Cuba, that this is the day of Babaluaye, San Lázaro, the Orisha of diseases and illnesses, but also of spells. The Orisha who always walks next to Osai, Patayansa, Patipolo, and many among others. And I was baptized when I had 2 months by the first Black priest of the local Catholic Church in the small, very, very small town in a village of São Paulo, Brazil, where I grew up. But when I had 8 years old, I was also baptized again in the Baptist church because my mother was converted at the time, and she took us to the services every week. My grandmother, she prayed for Ave Maria in French every night, and she saw the spirits, many spirits, and they accompanied me. My aunt too, she was from Umbanda, a mixed religion, spiritual religion in Brazil, and my grandma, and as my grandmother and me, this being around us. I also arrived in Cuba on a Wednesday, and I lived there sequentially for 3 years, but all the time I'm coming back. It was a sunny day, and I wanted to walk around the city, and I went for a walk to Vedado, a middle-class neighborhood in Havana. I didn't know anyone. It was my first time, my first day and first time in the town. Crossing one of the streets, I heard the batas, the drums, and I crossed it. I was called to saludar el santo, to say hello for the saint, the riches, the spirits. I don't know how to call it exactly, because it was a mix of religions. It was cumpleaños de Ochosi, cumpleaños. They taught me how to do it. I laid my heart on the ground, I received a tobacco. And a few months later, when I saw my destiny, saw the divinatory system in Ifá, when I consulted it through the Babalaos, it was verified that I read into it. My Orisha of head, it means my spiritual guide, was Ochosi. And while I still at the university in 94 or 95, I remember clearly that I have a dream with Ochosi, and she told me clearly that I should build myself a necklace with green and blues beads. I remember that for over 2 years I wore this necklace made by me, and the day it broke, my heart broke too. I did not attend, I never was in candomblés in my childhood, but this is part of my ontology as a Brazilian. And in Maranhão, in the Amazon, where I lived many years, I frequented the pajés, tambor de mina, and I attended these places for 23 years. When I went to Cuba in 2006, I was initiated in Regla Conga, it's called Regla Conga, It's not a santeria. And it wasn't just a curiosity, it was necessary for me because my health was fragile. When I had 6 years old, I was diagnosed with a very rare syndrome which affects the entire connective tissue, and that includes the heart. And I've been operated for different reasons, trying to fix myself and accelerate this degenerative process of this syndrome causes. Since I was a child, I heard many times from the allopathian medicines that I could not have babies. I have a damage, mentally damage, and I will die when I arrived about the 40 years. This data was a milestone for me because it constituted a good part of all my imagination about life, happiness, bonds, and so I took over the anthropology and its tools to try to understand this universe. And what can I do with anthropology? That was my question. In the beginning, I only used the writing. I tried just to write. It's the more common for us, but I used writing as a way to access the other side. But how to show on video on screen entities that everyone can see? How to make in a didactic way that the evident agents for some, like drums, stones, maracas, and beans, read as inanimate for someone, can be seen as alive. So I started to use my own body as a technology device of rituals. I never had any training in audiovisual, neither for the technical part, for the content part. I did it from a feeling, from entities that guided me in dreams, especially in dreams, but also from readings and metabolizing, I will say, what I digested with my eyes and what I read too. This seems to me to be a joint process, and I'm talking about my case in particular. I think that each person has their own way of conducting a story, to tell a story, and the subjectivities appear at the time of editing the film. Editing is a new writing, no, it's a rewrite. With that bunch of scenes we have, which have already been selected, as Roger said, we have a previous choice, and there is also the possibility of working with the camera, for whom has more financial conditions, no? And hence the need for both of them to have a sharp eye. Furthermore, we don't just film reality, we transform it when we film it. So how can we, our presence, develop this ritual? Can cinema intervene in the healing process, especially if it has as Roger said too? We have the same questions maybe because it's purposing our way to, our manner to do the things. But after the first writing, the first look comes to montage, a second writing, selecting what interests us for us among the collected images, cutting and organizing chronologies, how we will show these relationships about people healing themselves. So there are many layers when we are writing. No? Always permeates for the human relationships, and we develop it in the spaces where we are going to film. I have many proximity with the persons we are, I'm saying we because in general I am accompanied by someone for take the pictures, the scenes, and there's a kind of sensibility too. And this sensibility of each one has peculiarities. And I confess that in Cuba, for example, because I am Brazilian, there's a great cultural affinity between Brazil and Cuba. I had always a great interest. They are always asking for me about the carnival, the spells practiced in Candomblé, Umbanda, so it was a kind of proximity to stay near for the person. In Congo, Angola, it's always the same. Many other issues end up being part of this trying to understand these ethical issues, in addition to those evidently requested by the international associations or the ethics association. But how far can we show? What should we show? Are secrets important, and why they are important? We need to select all these. And I selected some excerpts here from this film in particular that touch in some of these issues, and I can also suggest other films that I made. I don't like the other films, and even this in the way they are made, but I think the people are too genuine in this moment there. I love the speech, not the format of this film, but I love the speeches and the way we could construct this dialogue with the people. I will show some parts of the film, and maybe we can talk a bit about this way to construct. The first piece is the 7. Fernando, could you put it, please? And my question there, it's only to show how to capture beings that are not seen, or not seen in the same way by us, by everyone. What tools can I use and to make these translations when we have divinatory objects, drums, wines? Yes, yeah, when you can.
Hello, is it showing already?
Yes.
Yes.
Just tell me if the sound is okay. Stella, I'm putting the
Yes.
that you asked, which is 7:20, I guess.
7:20, and
sorry.
It's just yes. I will. We can see some minutes, 1, 2, or 3 minutes.
All right, so
after
I will play, and you let me know when
okay, you want. Okay. Yes, okay.
He utilizado el palo porque entiendo que el palo es una religión que tiene antídoto para todo. Todo se resuelve en el palo.
Porque no se deja ver la cara.
Es que parece que lo enterraron, parece que con algo tapaba la cara. Vamos a ver, si quiere mira para acá, no tiene problema. Mira
no, ya te puedes mirar. A ver si tú te permites que tú puedas ver algo en la botella. Está muy turbia. Sí. Pero aparte de que está turbio, es como si lo hubieran agarrado con un paño, una cosa así, pan, llegaron los
lo taparon y lo dejaron
taparon, porque no se deja ver cara, sino esa. Ponlo ahí paradito así para que hasta que vaya.
No, espérate para que él me hable. Dame el banquito para acá. Un poquito para acá. Vamos que ahora vamos a conversar. Ayer te hablé que si ustedes tenían la propiedad de la casa.
Yes, Fernando, you can.
Dice ese espíritu que a él lo enviaron.
It's just to show it's very elucidative, because they are saying I can't see the face of the spirit. No one can see the face, and how can we translate when just some person can see one thing, one spirit or one feeling? How can we translate it on the camera? How can we capture this? The drum, the wind. In the report of one of the interviews, she says that the manifestations will take place in her own body. Through pain, fever, it's very frequent to say. And we will see forward Fernando, another chairman from Brazil. He reports from the taboos of the manifestations. Now, if you can put forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just a minute.
Una congregación.
Here or a bit before?
Before, maybe. Just a minute before. Yes, okay, it's only for to see.
Okay. Okay, aqui? Is it okay here?
Okay, just until 12, we can see apart.
Okay.
Que nace en el mundo, nace con un guía, un protector, su cordón espiritual. Uno los trabajamos más, otros trabajan menos, pero se va desarrollando a través de las misas espirituales, se va trabajando a través de llamar al muerto, de tener una comunicación directa con el muerto a través de una bóveda espiritual, donde se pone la cruz, se le pone flores, se le leen sus oraciones. Ese espíritu se va identificando con la persona, se va identificando porque si tú estás llamando a alguien que está contigo, que tú no lo ves, pero no lo ves hasta el momento que puedas desarrollarlo, porque después viene a ti y te dice, yo soy fulano de tal.
Con permiso a la mesa, Tata. Venga, mía, ¿qué problema tú me tienes en una pierna, Dice Maferefún, la sombra de un espíritu que tú tienes que viene con tendencia de San Lázaro, de Cuba, patrullar en ganga. Que dice que Maferefún es lecum contigo. Esos espíritus son como una congregación.
Fernando.
El espíritu más elevado de José iluminó.
It's only to show some issues or some questions, no? Like we heard there, he's talking about the hierarchies of the spirits, or how can we make this narrative, I will say believable, it's not the word, but credible maybe, or near for the spectator. And at the same time, we have another question about the spiritual development. What can we do so that the body does not suffer from this spirituality, or how to show entities that are not always visible for us. And only on the final part of the video, I chose to assume myself as a neophyte in search of healing. When I was constructing the video, I don't like to show me myself, but at least I decided to be present because I was the reason to stay there. And in the minute 24, please. Okay. I show my active participation as someone who is going to do ethnography, but I will also be healed. How to deal with this double journey, and how far can one area interfere with the other? We finish with these things. Okay.
Que lo atienden a uno directamente, no tiene que depender de vestimentas especiales, muchos vasos de agua, nada de eso. Me siento un esclavo de la religión. Siento que vine con una misión a la tierra y la cumplo a cabalidad. Como vine a soy, la buena noche criollo, yo dejo mi hueso allá, yo vengo a hacer caridad, yo dejo mi hueso allá, yo vengo a hacer caridad. Hay un congo lucumí de arara, que cuando llega plano tierra sacude bien sus collares. Ese congo bueno se está coronando en la tierra, porque es tierra que la vaya, ella está coronando. Que cuando llega plano tierra sacude bien sus collares, como conguito, como de verdad, si tú vas a la tierra cercana. Ayumi, una conga lucumi, siete sayas lucumi. Ayumi, una conga lucumi. Ay, yo la llamo y ahora viene una conga lucumi. Ayumi, una conga lucumi. Ay, siete potencia africana, una conga lucumi. Ayumi, Redentora te llama buen ser y te llama con amor a la tierra. Ay, yo quisiera ver ese ser cantándole pepo al divino ser. Oye, buen ser, avanza y ven, que coro te llama y te dice ven, ven y buen ser, avanza y ven, que el coro te llama y te dice ven. Oh, venir, protector, oh, venir, seré guía de nuestra misión. Oh, venir, protector a la tierra, ven, qué linda coronación. Y en coronación, bajan los seres. La luz, la fe, la unión, radia la luz, poder divino, radia la luz para este ser. Oren, 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 hermanos míos, oren, oren a la misión. Dum, dum, dale la vuelta de genio. Dum, dum, dum.
Only to show how this mix of neophyte and anthropologist are working, and it's as Roger said, it's a complex. When you are on the site, on the spot, it's a complex of sound, smells, and how can you capture this? It's for me, it's my issue. how to show all the complex situation and performance that are happening there. And I have many other, in fact, I was conducted for the anthropology in cause of, because I have my health condition. And in this time I think the music, for example, it's very, very important in this mix, in this complex. I have in this moment another project called the Vibe Voices of Iberian Black Europe, and the music in the context of faith, it's very important for me. And well, I would like to bring for our discussion today, how can we capture what's your choose, what we choose when we are there, and it's part of our understanding of the words too. And maybe we can discuss, I think it's better to discussing the ideas and the ways that we conceived our videos, and it could be more constructive, I think. And many thanks. Sorry, my language and my Creole language here. We can talk later, and thanks.
Thank you, Ana Stela. I mean, thank you for presenting in English. It was just perfect, and the images were really powerful, as someone has also commented. And I really liked also this intertwinement between your therapeutic journey and the film. I mean, there is so much to say upon these two films, these two presentations, and all the questions you raised. I will just share a quick comment before opening the floor to the discussion. I mean, this idea of making the invisible visible, especially with substances. Yesterday, we had so many presentations that dealt with the question of substances, how they move through the bodies in trance, these invisible substances that circulate in the ritual space, that connect people somehow, may also affect people, or they may heal people. So in some sense, how would the camera be also affected by these substances? And how can these images, as Roger mentioned, they can heal? And I'm just thinking about Belício de Jesus' work on the sense of cold presence, how people also watching Santeria's rituals through the screen may also be affected, may also experience the power of these spiritual forces. So this debate, I think it's kind of triggered even more by the pandemic and this kind of online worship, online attendance to rituals. So there are so many questions here, so I open the discussion. You're welcome to raise your hands and then come online and share your thoughts. And for those on YouTube, you can write down your questions in the chat box. Thank you both. So we have Vanya.
Thank you for both for sharing your images and for the powerful presentations and discussions of your work. I had a kind of commentary that goes in the same way, kind of the same direction that Emily is bringing up, because both of you refer to some questions that I would call, think of like their classical issues revolving around visual anthropology, things like what can we show? How do we negotiate the viewing and the showing? How do we position ourselves in relation to all of that? I think those are very important classic questions that are presented on your work. But I think there is, and Roger talks about addressing them in that kind of an experimental way. But I think there's also another question that is very present here, is that of how can we capture in camera what only some people can see, and also only some people are should see or allowed to see. And so it comes to me, like listening to you and seeing your films, you know, how can we capture visually, or how can we share visually the very partiality of vision? You know, how does film engage with that? And Ana Stela mentioned, right as she was ending, the idea of ambiance. And I think that's very interesting to think through. And I was wondering if both of you, Roger mentioned a little bit in relationship to the drumming in the bathroom in an apartment, you know, how sound kind of is played differently. But I was thinking in watching Ana Stela's film, how film sound has a main role in your editing, you know, how you cross from place to place and sound carries us. So I was wondering, you know, thinking, Emily talks about substance, and I was thinking about how sound plays into that as well in this, you know, I'm trying to think of like how to show what we can't see, you know, what kind of showing is that? What does that mean? Thank you.
Thank you. And we also had Alberto, Sydney. Alberto?
All right. My question is, let's say, correlated with the Vanya in a certain way. I would like to heuristically separate filming from what I would call cinematching, or filming the act of take the image, and cinematching the act of compose an ethnographic or fictional film to show to the others. So I am separating this to just to ask you about the as Vanya was asking about the substance of filming, obtaining, taking the image, and the conversion for cinematching, doing the, let's say, the selection of image in terms of, I can see in filming the imponderability, the unexpectable, the proximity, and then you convert all these qualities of filming to do the cinematching to a kind of plausibility, palatability of what you want to show to the others. So I would like to also to hear about your experiences of this kind of dilemmas, paradoxes between what is imponderable and amazing in filming to what I can show in cinematching.
Okay, I will just take Sydney's question, and then perhaps we can you can answer the first round of questions, and then we can open again for the other questions. Sydney.
Unmute. I asked the question, I have several questions and several comments. First is, has anybody followed up the patients to see whether they recover or what happens to them? Because this is a very important part when we spoke yesterday about evidence. These are healing rituals to patients recover, one question. But there is something broader, because with film, you can take material aspects of a ritual, but there is a whole symbolic world that these people see and believe in that you can't get at with film. And the only way we can do this is with the words in which we try to take from the people we are studying what their beliefs are and what the whole symbolic world that they believe is happening. And this requires, in addition to the filming, that somehow, and I don't know how you do this with a presentation, because you present film to an audience, but how do you bring someone in to say that this is the world of a supernatural, that people are trying, they're living in terms of it. And very often you have an audience that is very skeptical about supernatural beliefs. So how do you get at this? And finally, the point is that I have heard the word trance repeatedly. The concept of altered states of consciousness I have not heard. And I think this is very important because there are multiple states of consciousness. And I think as anthropologists, we have to begin to think about this, because I think out of psychology it came, there is a normal state and an altered state. I think this is not so. There are multiple states, and every one of us go into a series of different states of consciousness throughout our ordinary life, and especially when we get into rituals. And I think this is an area that hasn't really been studied and should. So that's it.
Thank you. So perhaps we follow the same order of presentation. Roger, do you want to go first in answering this question?
Yes, thank you very much. Wonderful questions, and I really enjoyed also the presentation by Ana Stela. Have a lot of things to say. Well, thank you for your comments. First of all, regarding Vanya's comments, I've always thought, and well, I'm not the only one, that there is a kind of a beautiful paradox in the story of cinema and ethnographic cinema in particular, in the sense that cinema is the art of presence. I mean, you can film on what is in front of the camera. If you want to take a photograph of someone, you need this person to be in front of the camera. But on the contrary, when you write text, you can describe a character or someone without having this person in front of you. But to make a film, you need the presence of what appears on the screen. Is it right? But paradoxically, since its inception, cinema, and ethnographic cinema in particular, has been very interested in what is not visible, in the world of, let's say, spirits, supernatural beings, ancestors, wherever, energies. And I think that it is, I mean, two ideas can be drawn from here. First one is that these beings are interesting in cinematic terms, in the sense that they appear as actions. It's right that they cannot be seen, but it doesn't mean that they are somehow irrelevant. They produce things. They produce changes in the bodies of people, in the way they talk, in the way they think themselves, in the objects. So it is true that they are not visible, but they appear as visible things in the sense that they appear as actions. They are actions, actually. And for example, María Líonza in the scene I showed before, well, she's not directly visible, but you can dream of her, you can have visions, of course, but then they show you a tobacco and they say, okay, here she is, okay? And when she descends into the body of medium, the body reacts. There is a grammar of the body which is different. So these beings are not visible, but this doesn't prevent them from being actions. Actually, they are actions. And another interesting thing is that perhaps the definition of cinema as the art of presence should be reassessed in the sense that perhaps cinema is also the art of absence. An anthropology, there is an anthropology of absence, you know that, in the sense that image, the root of the word image has to do with imagination. Image and imagination is the same thing. And when you film, you show something, but you always point to something which is beyond the frame. And this idea is very important because when we watch a movie, and there are cognitive studies about cinema and image, we, in our mind, we are not just seeing what's on the screen, but we somehow fill the screen with elements that are not directly visible and that I put by ourselves, with our imagination. It is this shot here that you see in here. You don't see my office beyond this line, is it right? But you know that my office continues over there. I mean, it's not, I mean, the absolute void here. Something is here. So it sparks your imagination. And I think that cinema is very powerful in this regard. When you see someone looking at the bottle, as in Ana's film, or looking at tobacco, there is this idea of the regime of visibility, which is interesting. What this person is seeing, actually. But we are somehow provoked. It's like a challenge. And then we start imagining, so seeing in our inward eye on what this could be. And this is also what cinema is about. So I think that this has something to do also with Alberto's argument about cinematching, no? The idea that not only we put elements on the screen that are not on the screen, that the watching and imaging is not only seeing the image, but filling the images with something which is not on the image. And this is our visual experience, although we are not aware of this. But when we edit, when you compose, as you were saying, there are risks because, of course, the principle of editing is that you create a sense which is not in image 1 or image 2, which appears out of the connection between both images. So the sense is not in the images, but in the relation between them. This is very structuralist in a way. But the idea is that, of course, there is a risk because you somehow, let's say, impose a sense in the images. But here again, I think that there are different ways of editing. Some of them are much more authoritative than others. And there is a way of editing which is much more close to this idea of suggestion that I was trying to convey, the idea that by bringing images together, you let the spectator think on the realm of the possible. And it is the idea that it is not shown, but it is possible in a way, and it sparks your imagination. And finally, I mean, Sydney has raised many interesting ideas. I did not follow up this patient personally, because my main contact was the healer. But next week, I went to see him. And I asked him if the patient had recovered, and he said that he was feeling better. At least this was his word. But I think that following up the therapeutic itinerary or biography of people is extremely important, and not only to keep the word of the healer, because you only have half of the picture. And I try to do this during my fieldwork whenever possible. And then finally, this idea of materiality, totally agree with you. The the multiple state of consciousness, this is something that refers to the anthropologist as well. I mean, when I film, you are also in a kind of different state of consciousness. I mean, when you really are skilled with your camera, as when you write, when you feel, let's say, inspired, you are not just thinking, okay, I'm Roger Canals, I was born in Barcelona. You're somehow in this flow, creative flow, and something similar happens when you film, in the sense that you are somehow within the ritual, participating in it, and you adapt your screen to what's going on, and it is a pleasure also. And I think, and I claim this word, a pleasure, not only intellectual, but sometimes even physical pleasure. I mean, I felt a physical pleasure filming rituals, smelling tobacco, coffee, honey, flowers, water. I mean, it's a very particular atmosphere. And then, just to conclude this intervention, I mean, a film is not a product in itself. A film has a meaning when it is seen by someone, in this case, you. So when we study a film, we have to take into account the life of the film after it is concluded. So what do these people do with the film afterwards? And where it is showed, seen by whom? And because, for example, then we realize that sometimes the film that we made on healing processes are reappropriated by the people themselves as an example of how to perform a ritual. And then you say, wow, I mean, here, I mean, the classical paradigm of referentiality is completely put upside down. Your film aims at capturing reality, but then reality tries to imitate the film that you have made. What's going on? So and this is an important aspect as well. I mean, we have to follow up patients, but we have to follow up films as well. And I take advantage of this word, and I want to say it every time I talk to María Líonza, to say thanks to the believers, artists, and friends involved in the cult of María Líonza, who have permitted me to undertake this research during almost 15 years.
Ana Stela, do you want to reply?
I want to reply in Portuguese. May I? I will brief. Acho que sim, vou ser breve para que possa fazer uma tradução sucinta também. Eu acho que os pensamentos estão conectados, né? Porque, na verdade, quando a gente pensa em mostrar... Primeiro, o antropólogo não é missionário, né? Eu acho que a gente não precisa pensar em convencer o nosso público de nada. E é um pouco isso também dessa necessidade quase pessoal, né? De compreender outras formas de ver o mundo e colocá-la numa outra linguagem, que muitas vezes, é claro, é muito mais acessível. No caso de Cuba, não. Em termos de leitura, por exemplo, há uma grande possibilidade. Mas o Brasil, a grande maioria dos religiosos afro-brasileiros são pessoas que não têm acesso à educação formal, né? Então, o trabalho do antropólogo não chega para se discutir e para se dialogar com essas comunidades. Acaba sendo um monólogo. O antropólogo que vai até lá tem a imagem que ele quer ter, né? Ou que ele pode ter, e faz a sua tradução. E eu penso que isso não é o papel da antropologia, né? Eu acho que a antropologia brasileira é muito rica, até justamente porque nós participamos dessa vida ativa, política, num sentido bem amplo, de dialogar com os nossos pares, né? Então, acho que um dos papéis da antropologia visual é esse também, né? Entre outros, é também ter um alcance de uma linguagem que nem sempre é como a língua escrita, né? Que é muito elitista, nem sempre chega a todos. Além dela ser muito mais, não só democrática, mas muito mais ampla, né? Nesse sentido também performático, sensorial, só falta o cheiro mesmo para ela dar conta inclusive dessas transnacionalidades, né? Como é que a gente faz isso em certos lugares e como acontece. E qual era a outra pergunta? Sobre seguir o paciente,
Ana, desculpa,
eu mesma...
Se a gente vai traduzir, você não quer traduzir a primeira parte, depois traduz, senão fica muita coisa.
Melhor.
Pode ser? Você quer fazer, Emily, eu faço eu?
Pode começar.
Posso fazer a primeira parte? Até que conseguir traduzir, anthropologists are not missionaries. We don't need to convince the public. We'll understand other ways of seeing the world. And in Brazil, in particular, given the lack of education of many participants in these rituals, anthropologists do not often engage their interlocutors with the result of their work, like their films, for example. And Vanya, if you want to continue.
She suggests that visual anthropology might be a more democratic language of communication, less elitist in the sense that it is more performatic, and it's also in the sense not only that people can reach the product, but also because it can be more performatic, include more dimensions. That, of course, smell is left out, but other dimensions are brought in. And that it's also in a broader sense of a dialogue. It engages in a broader sense of dialogue because images can go places where the written text might not go because of a lower rate of literacy. Cobriu tudo, Ana? Faltou alguma coisa?
Ok, acho que é isso. Acho que Roger foi bem.
Mas você ia continuar a resposta, eu te interrompi, desculpa, era só para traduzir aí, continua que a gente traduz a segunda parte.
Não, desculpa, eu também esqueci, senão não dá conta. Não, era só isso mesmo, dizer que também, eu acho que a grande vantagem de eu me fazer a minha autoetnografia é que eu me sigo enquanto paciente, e é isso, eu penetro nesses lugares nessa dupla condição, né, de antropóloga, mas também de alguém que vai em busca de cura também por uma questão pessoal, de vida pessoal.
So autoethnography helps and facilitate our access to these healing spaces, but also it allows her to follow up herself as a patient. Você quer adicionar algo?
No, okay.
So we have a question by Catherine. Catherine, do you want to come online?
Hello, can you hear me? You can't see my video. So I'm also an anthropologist and I work in Northeast Asia, as I was mentioning yesterday. And I have a few things I want to say. So in Buryat and Altaic cultures, oh, there it is. It's very common for cameras to stop during rituals or any kind of recording devices to completely stop. So I was wondering if that has happened to anyone. It has happened to me once. And it was when a bull spirit from a mountain came in and my camera stopped at that moment. And then I thought, okay, I will try to turn it on again. And if it turns on, then okay. And it did turn on again. And we had permission to shoot at that place. I also did an ethnographic film, which is very simple. I was studying a dance called Yochel, a Mongolian Buryat dance. And they dance, every 4 years they go and dance around a mountain. The dancers dance around a mountain. It's a joined dance, hands are joined. And I just went outside the circle and followed the people around the mountain the full time. And at the end I came in. I just had like a couple of screens at the beginning to show what it was. But I mean, it ended up being quite long, 30 to 45 minutes, something like that. And so I showed it twice, once at an exhibition for arts and humanities and health and medicine at the University of Alberta. And it was like people could just come in, it was just on a loop and people could come in and watch for as long as they wanted. So they basically did the editing. And another time I showed it at a conference and I showed it in its entirety. And I got one comment that, oh, it was very long, but it was like completely what the ritual was. Also to Sydney's point about altered states of consciousness, there was a very young that was working, well, I was friends with their family in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia. And she said that when she was doing this mediumship, she went and stayed somewhere else for 2-3 days. And in that time, all these different spirits in a row came through her body. So that's another state of consciousness that is probably not talked about very much. And so also with that film I did of Yochel, the dance around the mountain, I was also in a way participating because I went around the mountain even though I wasn't doing the dance and wasn't connected. So anyways, the question, comments there, and the question is, has anybody had those kinds of experiences where their cameras or recording devices shut down?
Good question. So we're collecting another couple of questions by Vanya's next.
Não, eu não. Minha mão já baixou, é o Alberto e Fernanda.
Ah, não, porque estou vendo ainda a sua mão. Então, Alberto?
I would mention what Sydney talked about before, the skeptical audiences. Thinking about yesterday, I would divide the skeptical audiences between the laziness, the afraid of frontiers, and the available to imagine. And thinking about what Ramon Sarro talked yesterday about to replace anthropology of religion to anthropology of imagination. I think that is very important to have imaginative audiences, to have any fertile ground to work with. So I think that in this sense, both the films I watched from Ana, from Roger, are basically very stimulating to my imagination. They are not closed. They are not saying you have to think about this or about that, about what is going on in the film. Sometimes any a direction or something like that. So I think that the idea of ethnographic film or visual ethnography is very related to stimulate imagination as ethnographic, conventional ethnographic text. And I think also that it is interesting, the Ana's film I watched before, and I didn't realize that it was she that was being healed by the beautiful work of those guys. A very interesting, very let's say rich, I think, aesthetically, to put the glass with water on the head and to make a kind of crown for her. It's very, very interesting. So it's good. I want to thank very much both Roger and Ana for the nice opportunity to know their work and to make us to think about at least imagination.
Fernando?
Thank you. Congratulations, Roger and Ana Stela. I really enjoyed your movies and having the opportunity to listen to you here today. I really didn't do a good job taking my notes here, so everything is a bit confusing. I won't make full, like, elaborate comments, just some loose ideas that came to my mind while I was watching. And one of them is related to Ana Stela's, I mean, halfway through that last ritual you showed us, the guy was laying down and they were covering his body with a blanket or with some, I think it was a blanket, I don't remember. And at some point after that, he mentions La Sangre de Simón Bolívar, that he was healing, that he was curing by the sangre, the blood of Simón Bolívar. And then that struck me, and I was just wondering, what thoughts do you have about that? About that made me remember of Michael Tosik's work, and also what do you think about that connection between politics and ritual in Latin America, or I don't know, given that you have this experience that is Brazil, but also Cuba, and I don't know. This is a first question. You also asked that at some point, like a very instigating comment. You said that subjects, if I'm not wrong, if I didn't misunderstand, you were saying that subjects appear at the moment of editing. Roger also commented on that a few minutes ago, and that is a very instigating question. And at the same time, you said, what do we choose when we are there, right? So this is, I'm not a specialist in visual ethnography, but I feel that these are two very important questions to this seminar today. And that made me think that the subject, whatever subject is emerging when you are filming, be it an ethnographer or interlocutor or filmmaker or just the person who is there making questions, I don't know, whatever subject emerges when you are choosing scenes, when you are choosing things to ask, that is not a fixed or a defined subject. And so it keeps changing throughout the process of filming. And also, in the end, that is the same subject or a different subject who is going to appear at the moment of editing. And also there are the other subjects who are emerging when you are editing, which are your interlocutors. So I was just thinking maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about this idea of filming and emerging subjects as you film, as you go. And a last comment to Roger. It's really very, oh no, before that, Ana Stela, I'm sure you know Santo Forte here in I don't remember that if it has a name in English. Mighty Spirit, I think it's something like that. And so one of your interlocutors just said that he's a esclavo de la religión, right? And that made me remember of one of Coutinho's interlocutor in that Santo Forte, where he says, I am Catholic, but Umbanda is my profession. So religion, in a certain way, is put in this place where you have to do it because you have this call, but not, I mean, you have to do it. And I know these are different contexts, but like being a esclavo de la religión, and also you have Umbanda or Spiritism as a job. So I don't know, maybe you feel instigated to share some thoughts about that. And then to Roger, let me see where I put it. There is this moment in the scenes that you shared with us that you are talking to him and to the therapist or healer, and then you ask, but this has nothing to do with brujería, and he says, no, this is esto no es brujería, and then he says, tú no me engañas, or esto no me engaña, something like that. This doesn't lie, sorry, referring to that technique, that particular technique he's applying. And so it's just very small, but that struck me as, like this moment in the ritual where the healer is just saying, this is true and you better believe it. So I don't know if you could share some thoughts on that too, as well as your relation to the person you talked to during your, I don't know. That's all, guys. Thank you once again. And feel free to answer whatever you want or just share thoughts.
Roger?
Well, thank you very much for all your comments. I'm sure that we could stay here for hours. And well, I think it's not possible, but I'll try to do my best. And hopefully we'll have other occasions to continue this conversation. First of all, regarding Catherine's question about the batteries going down and problems like this, there are many stories and anecdotes circulating within the cult of María Líonza, and I have also conducted fieldwork in Puerto Rico and in Barcelona, and there's a lot of stories about filmmakers, anthropologists, or even believers themselves who try to use technological devices and that found the problems such as the battery go down, or the DV got erased, or the memory cards erased, and it is because, there's a lot of stories like this, or cameras that broke unexpectedly. And most of the explanations are in the direction that spirit didn't want you to get these images, or you didn't follow the necessary steps, or perhaps cassettes that were lost or things like this. I personally, as a filmmaker, I have had some experiences like this, in the sense that, for example, I thought that I had batteries for 1 hour or 1 hour and a half, and 10 minutes later it was completely over, or that things like these happened. And of course, from a very rationalist point of view, my friends of mine using cameras, they would say because of the air pressure, humidity, heat, or whatever, the batteries go down. But of course, as anthropologists, we are not very interested in these explanations, or yes, we are interested, but if we compare them or put them in relation to other explanatory ways of explaining what happened there. So and then in order to prevent these things to happen, you have to follow a lot of ritual procedures, as I showed in my film. No? For example, the camera had to be purified as well with the smoke. They tried once to purify it with rum. but it's a liquid, so it's it's very dangerous. So we have to negotiate a way to see how to perform things. And I think that this negotiation, something that I always try to tell to my students, forms part of the ritual, forms part of the research, and forms part of the film itself, in the sense that in this context, when you are an anthropologist, it's not like when you are making advertising. You can't film everything you want or everything you would wish, because there's some shots that are not possible within this context. And it is interesting to, I have an article, if you are interested in these things, I'm sorry for the advertisement, which is called The Mirror Effect. And it was published in Visual Studies, in the journal called Visual Studies. And it is about all the shots that are not allowed in the cult of María Líonza, all the things that you cannot film. And for example, you can't film someone possessed by a medium with a frontal shot, putting the camera in front of this person. Why not? And I try to argue that this sort of visual prohibition are of high interest for anthropology and forms part of the cinematic or the research process itself. Regarding the second question about imagination, yes, I totally agree with you, Alberto. And the idea is that it's interesting to capture imagination not only as a faculty that we all have in different degrees, but as something that emerges. So imagination emerging when this person is looking at the bottle in Anna's film, there's imagination in process, emerging, you see, or when you see the person looking at the tobacco, no? And there's imagination that appears. You are witnessing the imagination of something that happens as an event, not only as a faculty. I think that this is the interesting thing. Fernando, thank you very much for all your questions. Regarding the blood of Simón Bolívar, no, of course, here this ritual was filmed in Barcelona, next to my house, and I was very shocked just to hear the name of Simón Bolívar there. I mean, it seemed to me so puzzling. And well, Simón Bolívar, you know, Simón Bolívar is one of the main patriotic figures of Venezuela, the most important patriotic figure of Venezuela and part of Latin America. And yes, you are right. One of the theses of Tausig, but also Fernando Coronil and other authors, is that these religious practices and the state don't have to be perceived as two opposing realities, as part of the Bible literature and defended during a time. There was the idea that there was a state and these cults were marginalized and were opposed to the state, and the state persecuted them, and they tried to differentiate themselves or to fight against the state. The fact what we see is that the one is the inverted mirror of the other. So within this cult, for example, you see an appropriation of the patriotic figures, but also a kind of procedures that are very similar to the bureaucratic state that we all know, and which is especially strong in Latin America, but in also places as well. The permissions, the hierarchy of spirits and whatever. So there is a kind of mutuality in a way. And this is something that the term I used in a paper called Spirits Against the Law, on how spirits deal with bureaucratic issues. And then the other way around, I mean, the state also tries to possess the citizens of the nation with its values and its ideals, no? Its idea of progress and whatever, and with state rituals. And so in a way, they oppose to each other, but they are just the inverted image of one of each other. And then regarding this idea of when he says, okay, he says something while smoking the cigar and the ashes go down, fall, and he says, okay, true words, palabra cierta. No? This is a sign. If you say something and something drops, falls, it means palabra cierta. It's true. So, and here we are faced to the notion of evidence. What is an evidence? And the word evidence has to do with videre in Latin, and videre means to see. And so there's a connection between the word of evidence and something that you can't see. And And here what is interesting is what constitutes an evidence. Of course, it depends on each semiotic ideology, as King would say. But because, for example, during a lot of time, photography was an evidence. Photography was an evidence. And if you went to a court and you brought a photography, it was a conclusive evidence or proof that something happened. It is not an evidence anymore. We are in the times of Photoshop and what. This is the main topic of the project I am developing right now. So what constitutes an evidence? And it depends on who is assessing the evidence, but also on some kind of shared epistemology between different persons. Yeah, I think that is, but it is strong. So how allows you to say this is true? I mean, this is like this. I mean, this is an evidence.
Well, just a quick comment before passing the word to Ana, because what you just said reminded me of what happened to me in the field before digital cameras, when we had to develop the photograph taken in the ritual. And I remember one night I was taking some photos of a ritual in the Valle do Amanhecer, and when I went to develop them afterwards, there were like lights coming, well, placed in front of the mediums in these images, and these were welcomed by these mediums as evidences of these energies that they described in rituals. So this the camera kind of captured these lights, these substances, invisible substances, into the image, and this makes me think also of how these happenings to our devices also trigger different or change relationships in the field. For example, I got this photograph and I handed over to the medium and said, well, I took this picture of you in the ritual, and she wasn't very keen to to speak to me before, and then she suddenly realized that I've taken a picture of her, and our relationship suddenly changed. Not in terms of interviewing her or something, but our relationship changed. I mean, I gave her something that actually put into an image the substances that she feels in her solar plexus. So we discussed this a little bit, but this was just a comment, what happened before digital photography in our in developing our photographs. Ana, do you want to answer the questions?
Só comentário que eu acho que, na verdade, parece distante destas respostas, mas acho que tem também a ver com tudo que a gente foi dizendo. Nós estamos aqui para refletir sobre a nossa situação, né? De cura, de curas não convencionais, digamos assim, enquanto antropólogos. E eu acho que a gente tem feito, como antropólogos, um esforço tão grande para validar as nossas crenças, como se fosse quase um crime. Nós temos outras visões sobre enfermidade, sobre o que é cura, sobre o que escapa daquilo que a gente convencionou que é ciência. E a gente quer fazer essa tradução, depois eu volto. Quer fazer pausa, Emily?
Sì, un poco mais devagar perché perdi una parte. So we're here to reflect on our own non-conventional healing. We made the effort to validate our experiences, our experiences of healing in the field. Ana quer complementar un poco perché foi un poco rápido.
Eu volto. É só para um pouco voltar a uma fala, acho que foi de alguém que diz que o Ramon, né, disse ontem que o cuidado para não trocar a antropologia pela religião. E eu tenho escutado mesmo, em vários encontros que tenho participado, essa angústia do antropólogo de validar as suas crenças, né? Outras crenças, que não seja na ciência, nesta ciência. Né? Eu acho que a gente deveria se libertar um pouco dessa culpa, de achar que é científico ou não é científico, se quebra o aparelho ou não. Para mim, isso é tão bem resolvido hoje, né? Claro que eu já passei também por essa angústia, mas eu acho que quando a gente deixa as coisas acontecerem também de uma maneira mais aberta, para que a gente receba outras ontologias, outras formas de ler o mundo. E daí essa necessidade de pensar se o meu público vai entender ou não, ou se vai ter público, né, para um filme de etnógrafos. E é claro que todo mundo...
Desculpa interromper. Então, so as Ramon mentioned yesterday, to be careful not to exchange anthropology with religion. Well, I think that we need to free ourselves from this sense of needing to validate other beliefs or our experiences. So let's just be open to receive other ontologies and ways of understanding the world without feeling guilty about this.
Acho que era isso mesmo. Acho que a questão que a gente está discutindo aqui acaba por ser, né? Acho que todas essas indicações e os comentários tocam sempre nessa questão, né? O que é válido, o que não é. Eu acho que a gente ganharia muito mais se a gente ultrapassasse até essa camada aí do crer ou não crer, porque também é um processo pessoal, né? E acho que a universidade tem que fazer parte desse processo de dialogar com outras formas. Se a gente participa de uma antropologia que se diz participativa, que se diz, né, a antropologia aberta ao outro, até onde é aberto, né? Ser aberto não é só descrever o que o outro faz. Acho que é isso.
So if we want to speak about an anthropology which is participative, I think we should move beyond this kind of limitation. So how open are we? What is the limit of this participative anthropology if we put boundaries, set these boundaries, and to feel this need to validate? Let's just be open and understand. Let's just be open to exchange these understandings of the world in a more relaxed way, let's say. Então, Alberto, if you want to add a comment or a question, we are kind of moving towards the conclusion.
Just to clear, I mentioned Ramon Sarro, and I already apologize about my rusty English. So I just to clear, Ramon Sarro yesterday, for those who were not here yesterday, he said, replace anthropology of religion to anthropology of imagination. So it's just to clear this, because it was not saying, I that he can think about this, what you are saying, Ana.
Yes, no problem. It's not it's not for Ramon. I say that he don't think like this, but it's for the generalists.
Yes.
So I think we need to move towards the conclusion. I don't know if our filmmakers want to add something.
My last word is just to thank you and the audience for your attention and for inviting us in this wonderful meeting. And I do sincerely hope that we will have opportunities to pursue this conversation and who knows, to see each other face to face in a not too distant future.
Yes, thank you so much. I love it be here.
And the co-organizers of this event, do you want to add something?
No, I just want to echo this. Thank you. It has been really nice the past 2 days and sharing the conversations with everybody who could attend and come and share their thoughts and work here. Thank you very much.
I just want to say for everyone that we are increasing our list of our agenda for discussion today. I included a little bit more issues to us to develop, to talk about, to discuss. Thank you very much for everyone.
So I must say that we're already working with Roger and Ramon to organize the workshop in Oxford, which will take place around May 2022. And it will be a visual ethnography and also with round tables following the same format that we did now in Brazil. I'd like to share with you some of our contacts so you can be updated upon our events. So this is our network address and Twitter. We also have a Facebook page and group. Please feel free to post on our group on Facebook all the events that might be relevant, the publications that may be relevant. I mean, I think that sometimes it's not about showing our work, but actually sharing resources for our research. And this is one of the aims of this network. So I'd like to thank you all, thank all the co-organizers of these events, those who have followed us in these 2 days. There are so many themes, so many ideas that we need some time to elaborate and perhaps bring them in to the next workshop. We hope to have this multi-local workshop, but still be connected through these platforms, but hopefully from a shared room in a physical sense in one of our universities and meet up personally. Thank you all, and thank you those who followed on YouTube, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.